Catching Santa Claus by Samantha Sawyer. Introduction. It was early November 2019, and I was chilling on the couch after helping my dad decorate his house for Christmas, when he turned to me and said with conviction, "Sam, you know what I really want for Christmas? A book of short stories about your favorite Christmas memories." And I thought to myself, that sounds like fun. I think I'm going to give that a go. Almost immediately, my brain flooded with memories. Images of twinkling rainbow lights and presents covered in metallic bows and ribbon curls. The smell of freshly baked pumpkin pie and warm sugar spritz cookies. The texture of fake tree needles and cold snow. Days filled with joy and lots of laughter. Feeling a rush of excitement that I hadn't felt in a long time, I embarked on a journey to capture onto paper the laughter, the magic, and the mishaps of Christmas during the 90s and early 2000s. By that Christmas, my dad's little book of Christmas memories was printed and in his hands. He immediately began reading it, and he had the biggest smile on his face, maybe a glistening tear or two, indicating that he really enjoyed his gift. A few months later, we were all in quarantine, stuck at home trying to keep ourselves from going stir-crazy from boredom, thinking about all our plans and goals that had to be put on hold, our traditions that we had to set aside for an unknown amount of time. As 2020 was crawling by, I kept thinking about my short stories, how much joy that project brought me, from looking through old family photos to wondering on how best to describe snow. Man, that was so fun to write. I think other people might enjoy these stories too, and turning it into a real book will keep me sane, maybe. And that's how you came to be reading this book. Now, enough introduction. Without further ado, please put on your favorite PJs, curl up with a cup of hot cocoa, mulled wine, eggnog, whatever you like, and join me on my journey to the not-so-distant past. Thanksgiving. For me, Thanksgiving heralds the Christmas season with turkey and merrymaking and pumpkin pie baking, mostly because all the Christmas decor has been up in stores since October 1st. So can you really blame me for being in a Christmas mood during Thanksgiving? It's Christmas in Kansas City. For me, Thanksgiving wasn't just about being grateful for all the blessings I had in my life. It was also the starting flag for the Christmas season. Folks, get your wallets ready. By Thanksgiving, there were already signs of Christmas. The first being that your ears couldn't help but notice that song playing on all the radio stations. You know the one I'm talking about. Then red cardinals, while they are here all year round, are suddenly seen because everything is now brown. Christmas wreaths start to show up on front doors, and red bows are suddenly tied to our mailboxes. Christmas tree lights pop up in front room windows, and you run into poinsettias everywhere you turn, but especially at home improvement and grocery stores. I will concede that for most of the country, the starting flag is probably the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which ends with Santa floating into New York City, letting everyone know that he was here and feeling generous. But here in Kansas City, many locals celebrate the arrival of Christmas with the Country Club Plaza lighting ceremony, which starts around dinner time on Thanksgiving Day. With plates of pie in hand, my family would gather at the TV and watch the local news broadcast the ceremony. My brother and I played with crayons and toy trains, not really interested until we heard that countdown start. You know immediately when you are at the plaza because it is such a stark contrast to the glass skyrises that surround it. The Country Club Plaza is a Spanish-inspired shopping center in the heart of downtown Kansas City. Creamy stucco buildings with brick facades are capped with terracotta tiled roofs. The bell towers are covered in Spanish mosaics, and the murals of dancing señoritas are tucked away to be seen by a glancing eye. You can't walk 2 paces without running into a fountain, and a waterway runs alongside the plaza where you can go on gondola rides. Horse-drawn carriages are seen mingling in city traffic, the most stunning being the Cinderella carriage, though my favorites are the Victorian and vintage carriage. Every year when the master switch is flipped, the entire plaza lights up at once and the city shoots off fireworks. I really loved the fireworks, and seeing all the lights turn on at once over such a large area boggled my mind when I was a kid. This year I'm hoping to go down to the lighting ceremony, see what it's like in person instead of through the TV screen, since this year is their 90th anniversary. 2019 at the time this is written. Hopefully it won't be too cold. The day after Thanksgiving. It begins. Breakfast of Holiday Champions. After a day of stuffing ourselves like overstuffed Build-A-Bears with turkey and antacids, the first thing I do, is eat leftover pumpkin pie. This is not the time for cereals that are reminiscent of tree bark. No time for greasy, artery-clogging bacon or sausage. Nothing can compare to chilled, homemade, sweetly spiced pumpkin pie, covered in real whipped cream. Specifically, my pumpkin pie. Now, I'm going to toot my horn here a little. I make the best pumpkin pie that I personally have ever had. I use canned pumpkin like everyone else I know, but that's where the similarities end. There are a few things that I have perfected over the years to make my pies extra delicious, like not measuring the spice and learning to whip up the eggs before mixing them into the pie batter. It will be so smooth that it'll practically melt on your tongue. There is only one other pumpkin pie I've had that has ever come close to beating mine, and that is my dad's, though that was not always the case. Dad was forbidden from making pumpkin pie for several years. The worst pumpkin pie anyone has probably ever had, no joke. Now, I'm not talking about a burnt pumpkin pie. I'm talking about a pumpkin pie that overall looks like a regular, amazing, warm pumpkin pie. Looking at it, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between his and any other store-bought pie. Honestly, I can't remember if it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that we were having a big family get-together around the holidays. That year, I want to say high school, Dad wanted to try his hand at making the pumpkin pies, and I said sure, why not? The merriment flowed freely as the night went on and the meal had concluded. After a few moans and groans, after the pant buttons and zippers had been loosened, it was time to carve up and serve up the pumpkin pie, the star of the evening. My Grandma Leanne, my dad's mom, got the first slice and the first bite, piled high with whipped cream like it ought to be. "Sam, where's the sugar?" Her blue eyes met with mine, clearly surprised. Immediately I was confused. What? Add more sugar? Does she mean on the top, like creme brulee? That pie has like 2 cups of sugar in it and is covered in whipped cream. How much more sugar could she need? "Well, Grandma, we don't use sugar." "What? You don't use sugar?" "Yeah, we don't need to add more sugar. It has plenty." Grandma shot me a look. "All right, whatever you say, Sam." Looked back at the pumpkin pie, set her fork down, not bothering to take another bite. At this point, I am still clueless. You, the reader, probably know where this is going. I sure didn't, but I found out really quick. I went up to the stove where the pies were resting on the wire cooling racks, looking so warm and inviting. I cut myself a large slice. Good pumpkin pie is one of my weaknesses, and I will happily be a glutton for it. And I piled on a mountain of whipped cream. Not bothering to wait until I was back at the table, I dug my fork in and took my first bite. I realized right away what Grandma Leanne had been talking about. The flavor coated my tongue, and I managed to swallow it down, though I really didn't want to. "Dad, you forgot to put sugar in the pie." "What?" His face twisted in confusion and disbelief. "Taste it," I say, offering him my fork and slice of pie. He tasted it. "Oh, brother," he groaned, his eyes rolling sky high in frustration. I burst out laughing. The word spread fast, and soon everyone was tasting the pie, making funny faces of disgust, and laughing so hard they started complaining about how they were too full to be laughing this hard. My aunts and uncles, the cousins, my brother, Mom, the grandparents, everybody. Dad just looked at the pies, hands on hips and brow furrowed. "How did I forget to put in the sugar?" Where the pie should have been sweet and spicy, in its place was a flavorless, spicy veggie mush, with a pile of whipped cream on top. I tried to eat more of it, thinking the whipped cream would help offset the horrible taste, but it didn't. "I'm sorry, Dad, but you're fired from making the pumpkin pies." Everyone laughed and unanimously agreed, including my dad. Whenever the pumpkin pies are brought out at the family holiday parties, someone brings this story up, and Dad still shakes his head and we all sit around and have a good laugh. He is no longer banned from making pumpkin pie, but whenever my dad does make it, I remember to take a small bite, just in case. Christmas herpes. Our Christmas decorations were primarily stored in the basement. Our house was a California split which came with a finished walkout basement, and then a door leading to what I would term the actual basement. Concrete floors and walls, exposed beams, cobwebs, and the sump pump that had a bad habit of flooding every few years. Thus, the basement, to distinguish between the basements. That's where all the Christmas linens were stored, as well as the 30 boxes of ornaments, the gold angel tree topper, the wrapping paper and bows, the nativity scene, the stockings, the tree skirt, old Christmas cards, even the Christmas VHS tapes. The only thing that wasn't down there was the tree. That was kept in the attic, which was in the garage and kept in its original box. The tree was an absolute pain, probably the number one thing I didn't like about the holidays besides homework. The night before, we had usually vacuumed the floor because we had company over for Thanksgiving. And as soon as that box was open, loose needles sprouted like weeds all over the carpet, completely defeating the point of vacuuming the previous day. We sorted each individual branch by the color painted on the sharp metal ends, which over the years got harder and harder to see. This system was supposed to help you know which branch belonged on a specific portion of the tree. This was mostly guesswork because the trunk of the tree wasn't color-coded. Sometimes I'd spend 10 minutes looking at 2 branches, trying to figure out which pile they needed to go in. After we finished sorting, we'd attach them to the trunk and fluff them, which took what felt like eons to do, with my mom and dad coming in behind my brother and I fluffing them, just a bit more, because we were little kids and we kind of sucked at it. We did more vacuuming around Christmas time than any other time of the year because of the needles. Tree needles, I am convinced, are the Christmas version of glitter herpes. It will be months later, and you'll be coming in from a hot day in the sun wearing your brand new super cute iridescent mermaid-scales swimming suit and those cute heart sunglasses your best friend let you borrow, and you'll go into your room and kick off your flip-flops, and that's when you'll see it, a tree needle that you somehow missed back in January. Personally, I always thought that the whole point of a plastic tree was to avoid the needle fallout that you get with a real tree, but I have since revised my opinion. I have decided that plastic trees were made to really imitate real trees, which included the needle fallout, but came with reduced fire risk, which I can get behind. After too much time had passed, the tree would be up and fluffed and the real fun would begin. Decked out. Everyone has their own unique way of decorating for the holidays. Some people like to hang a wreath on their front door and call it good, while others go all out, to the point that their house makes the local news because the entire property is transformed into a Christmas wonderland, which flashed brilliantly and blindingly to Christmas songs being played on the radio. My family was somewhere in the middle. After the tree was up and fluffed, we pulled out all the Christmas lights. After 30 minutes of untangling them, we'd plug them into the wall to make sure they still worked from the previous year. Our lights were always rainbow, probably because my brother and I liked seeing all the pretty colors on the ceiling. When I was a kid, Christmas lights lasted for years. Now they only last one Christmas season. Nowadays, testing the lights means an emergency trip to a hardware store to grab a few packs of lights that we know won't last. After the lights were successfully up, we'd turn on the Christmas radio station, 94.9, and Mom would sit in a chair and sort through the boxes of ornaments, looking for the ornament hangers which were always hidden away for some reason. So well hidden we would have to go out and buy more, only to find them almost immediately when we got back home, so we just add them to the ever-growing, never-ending, tangled mess of hangers. Once an ornament was ready, it would be passed to my brother and I to hang. Hand-crocheted mini stockings that would hold candy canes made by my great-grandmother Corinne. A homemade wreath ornament made out of a paper plate that I made in kindergarten, which I still have. Vintage red and green glass ornaments that were decorated with sequins, our Barbie and train ornaments, my dad's fishing ornaments that we would get him almost every year. The giant purple and gold ball ornament my brother and I got my mom one Christmas because we knew that her favorite color was purple. About halfway through decorating, my brother and I would get bored and want to do something else. There were a lot of ornaments. We'd dust the fireplace mantle and fight over who got the sleigh overflowing with gifts stocking hanger, to which the loser would be left with the pretty boring rocking horse hanger. We'd hang the stockings and dig out the glass Christmas tree jar, which would soon be filled with either red and green M&Ms or red, green, and silver Hershey's Kisses. While Dad finished the tree up for us, Mom would help us hang the singing Christmas advent calendar over the hall closet door and wrap the banisters with garlands. Yes, more needles to vacuum up. There was only one thing that was ever missing from our tree trimming, and that was tinsel. Growing up, I had no idea that you could decorate trees with it till I was maybe in 8th grade. Dad had a plastic box full of it down in the basement, which he used to tie flies for fly fishing, and I used to braid it into my doll's hair. We still don't use it to this day, and I have no idea why. The gold angel was the last to go on the tree, and I go to the stores and look at their Christmas tree angels, thinking maybe I'll find one that will be just as beautiful as she is. No success so far, so she doesn't get to retire yet. She will probably never get to retire. Before the decorating madness was declared over, there was one last decoration I would put up, and that was my Christmas wreath. One year in grade school, I got the idea to make my own Christmas wreath, and I knew exactly how I wanted to decorate it. I told Dad my idea, and he thought it was a great one, so he took me to the dollar store for me to get supplies. He pointed out to me that I had no way to hang it, so I grabbed the prettiest hanger I could find, which was bright brass with a Santa Claus on the front. He and I worked on it together, and I was so proud when it was finished. It looked so beautiful. A large green wreath wrapped with silver garland with clusters of small, colorful ornaments. Simple, but really shiny and colorful. Every year I pull it out from storage and hang it on my bedroom door, its place of honor. And with that, the Christmas decorating was complete. Christmas cheer. Noodle soup and Christmas lights, reindeer and snow so bright, they all make Christmas cheer take flight. Santa doesn't live at the North Pole. Every kid is taught that Santa Claus, the jolly white-haired fat man who flies across the sky in a magical sleigh with magical reindeer and breaks into your house to leave presents, lives and works up at the North Pole. I disagree. He lives in Silver Dollar City. Silver Dollar City is a theme park in Branson, Missouri, down in the Ozarks. The Ozarks are made up of a really old mountain range, like really old, which stretch from southern Missouri down to Arkansas and even into Oklahoma. Every year, the Charles Dickens-era theme park is transformed into a Christmas-winter wonderland. It's a 3-hour car ride for us, and completely worth it. After a freezing tram ride from your car to the park entrance, you are greeted with a beautiful wreath the size of a house. Once through the gates, everything is glowing bright with Christmas lights. To this day, it is one of the most magical sights I have seen. Everything from the trees, to the train, to random whiskey barrels sitting on the ground is covered in lights. Millions and millions and millions of lights. Snowflakes are strung from tree to tree, and a 50-foot tree sits proud in the main square, with the lights dancing to the carol of the bells. While the sheer quantity of Christmas lights takes my breath away, the park itself has its own unique charm. Handmade wooden baskets, blown glass, hand-dipped wax candles, and a whole store dedicated to Christmas all year round. My first time there, we went into a random shop and I saw a woman making a cloth doll. Noticing me, she offered to teach me how to make my own. I chose red and green rag strips and made myself a simple Christmas doll, who I cuddled with for months afterwards. There are warm, handmade cinnamon rolls the size of your head, and skillets large enough to cook a man are sizzling with spiced vegetables and sausage that warm you right up after being out in the cold for hours. A big part of the entertainment for Silver Dollar City during Christmas time are their performances. During my first visit, my nose runny and my ears freezing, my parents decided we needed a break from the cold and we stood in a long line waiting to go into a large building. Mom explained that we were going to see a play based on a Christmas book called A Christmas Carol. I thought there were going to be a lot of people singing Christmas songs, which sounded good to me. I quickly learned that I was wrong, and as a little kid, the play was pretty scary. I didn't like the ghosts rattling the chains, Tiny Tim's character made me want to cry, and then death came onto the stage. It was the Grim Reaper, live in front of me. I was quietly freaking out and kept glancing at Mom, waiting for her to start panicking, but she never did, so I didn't either. It took a few more times of watching the play for me to fall in love with it, but I will always remember the shock of seeing the Grim Reaper for the first time at Christmas in Silver Dollar City. The Grim Reaper aside, one of my other favorite activities in the park is to get on their train ride, which takes you deep into the Ozark woods. The train is lit up with Christmas lights, of course, and it stops in the middle of the forest at a small clearing under a starry sky where a small skit is acted out for the audience. But I'm not going to spoil it for you, you'll just have to take the train ride yourself. Hire yourself to Silver Dollar City. The pièce de résistance is the parade, in case there wasn't enough Christmas for you already. Thousands of people flank the streets on either side, with people trying to find higher ground to see over the crowds. The parade starts at one end of the park and winds its way past the Christmas tree in the main square. And if you're lucky like I was, you'll see Santa ride by and give you a jolly smile and a cheery wave. As a kid, this place was the most magical place in the world, and I can't see Santa Claus living or working anywhere else. The Nutcracker. I was maybe 8 years old, and for Christmas I was given a stunning burgundy crushed velvet dress, which I first wore to the Nutcracker Ballet, which I hadn't seen before. For years, the Nutcracker was performed at the Midland Theater in Kansas City, and this theater blew me away. It oozed romance and luxury as soon as you stepped into the lobby. The building was Baroque-inspired, and you walked up to a grand staircase to your seats which were covered in red velvet. The walls were covered in gilded swirls and curls and intricate plaster carvings, my favorite which was a knight's helmet that stared down at us from above the stage. The orchestra started to play, and I sat up straighter in anticipation. Sublime music paired with graceful dancers dressed in the most opulent costumes my 8-year-old eyes had ever seen enchanted me. One thing I specifically remember being astounded by was during the waltz of the snowflakes. It started to snow. I was amazed and confused as to how they could make snow when it hadn't been snowing outside. Where did they get it? I had never seen anything like that before, and I thought it was magic. The joy I felt watching this ballet is impossible for me to really put into words, but a few chords from the overture and I'm right back in that theater seat, enthralled once again. The Christmas I lived in my Victorian lady fantasy. My grandma Leanne and her best friend Gloria lived in a small town called Paola in Kansas. One year my family was invited to Gloria's house for a Christmas party. I was pretty excited to see what an adult Christmas party was like and how it contrasted to our Christmas Day celebrations. I had no idea what Gloria's house looked like, and I was thrilled when we pulled up to the front of her house. Gloria and her husband lived in a Victorian mansion. I had grown up fantasizing about being a fancy Victorian lady, and this was as close to that fantasy as I was going to get. This house was everything I had pictured in my head. The exterior was covered in gingerbread and had turrets, dormers, and a tower. The front door had stained glass panes, and the outside was painted a rich navy blue and had bright yellow trim. The spindles of the front porch rusty orange and forest green. The inside was a revelation. The crystal chandelier, the velvet furniture, the carved wood details on the walls, all of this was absorbed in hindsight as I was fully preoccupied with everything else I was seeing in front of me. They had a never-ending sea of Christmas trees. It had never occurred to me that you could have more than one Christmas tree, and they had upwards of 20. There was a patriotic tree, a cat Christmas tree, a pale pink Christmas tree, and a retro Christmas tree. There were so many I can't remember them all, but I remember just spending the next several hours eating paper-thin ginger snaps and looking all over the house trying to count how many Christmas trees they had and ranking which ones were my favorite. It was so memorable that my mom decided a few years later to get a second Christmas tree for our house. For many years, we had our bright and colorful family tree down in the basement, and the new tree was a large formal tree with red and gold ornaments, poinsettias, and white lights, adorned with a huge golden bow on top in the living room. I fully intend to continue this tradition in my own home despite all the tree needles I'll have to deal with. Where are the lights at? When I was little, our house was near the top of a huge hill, and from my bedroom window I could see all the other houses in our subdivision for miles. Each night before bed I would sit at the windowsill and look out at all the Christmas lights, just enjoying all the pretty colors, the roofs covered in snow, the moon glowing brightly. There's just something about Christmas lights that my family loved. At least once a week leading up to Christmas, my family would meander through subdivisions and other towns looking at all the light displays. Occasionally we'd find a drive-through display or a house that was so heavily decorated we'd stop and stare for a few minutes trying to see all the little details, picking out our favorites. The more the lights made a house look like gingerbread, the more I loved them. We'd drive into the big city to see the skyrise that colored their windows to make a large wreath and the mayor's Christmas tree down at Crown Center. It felt like it was 100 feet tall, the biggest tree my little kid eyes had ever seen, covered in white lights. My family loves Christmas lights so much we travel out of state to see them. We chased a blizzard. My dad, stepmom Rachel, and my brother and I all piled into Dad's red Buick and we headed out from Drexel, Missouri to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. It was bright and sunny when we left that day, and we stopped at every Brahms we found to try as many ice cream flavors as we could. In Broken Arrow there is a place called Rima, a large church complex, and that was where the lights were, the whole reason for this weekend road trip. We parked the car and walked through millions of lights with hundreds of people also enjoying them with us. A beautiful pond glistened with the reflection of all the lights, which hung from trees like tinsel and danced to Christmas music. After walking through the main attraction, my stepmom and I decided to get some funnel cake and hot chocolate. And while we enjoyed these sugary treats, we checked the weather forecast for Oklahoma and Missouri. Missouri was about to have a blizzard for the first time I had ever known. We knew this going down to Oklahoma. Missouri weather was so unpredictable, we figured we wouldn't have to worry because it probably was going to move further north and miss us completely. Nope. The blizzard was actually going to happen. So, our new plan was to spend more time in Oklahoma and just follow the blizzard home. The only thing I really had to worry about was that all I had for footwear was a pair of flats. I hadn't owned a pair of boots in years, let alone boots that could handle snow and ice. The closest thing I had to boots was a pair of sneakers, and I didn't bring them with me. The next day, we decided to get some lunch and hop over to my favorite aquarium, the Oklahoma Aquarium in Jenks, Oklahoma. After several hours there, we went to a local farm supply store where I picked up a pair of snow boots and looked at the baby chicks and bunnies because who can resist baby chicks and bunnies? And surprisingly, the plan worked. We caught the tail end of the blizzard and we all safely followed it home with fancy footwear and fond memories. Though I must admit, I kinda wish I hadn't missed the blizzard. Who knows when the next one will be. It would have been cool to see, though not be out in like the cat was. Where's Freya? Freya, pronounced Freya, a petite tabby cat with a lyrical meow and strongly slanted light green eyes, is one of 3 cats and an old lady cockapoo named Shirley that lives with me at my house that I share with 3 other roommates. Freya isn't scared of anything and will go wherever she pleases, regardless of how we humans feel about it. Being out in the wild as a kitten in the middle of a really cold winter probably helped her become the brave cat she is. Freya is no longer an outdoor cat, but a pampered princess who demands affection all the time and who will trip you as you're trying to walk because you aren't paying her enough attention. And who do you think you are, peasant, to deny me anything? However, she still retains that wild streak despite her elevated status in life and is constantly trying to sneak outside for an adventure. However, we have young teenagers who like to race their cars down our stretch of road and we refuse to let her outside anymore. That and she would always come back pregnant and we got really tired of that real quick. I was not there for this story. It was texted to me secondhand the day of the blizzard. I will never forget the picture my roommate sent me. Freya, wrapped up in a burrito, her face squished so much she looked like a rabbit. The glare from her big green eyes had me bursting out into laughter in my dad's car on our way home from Oklahoma. My roommates were all sitting in the living room enjoying their tea and apple ciders, laughing and having a good day watching the blizzard when they started to hear crying. It didn't stop, so my roommate Brittany began to hunt for the sound, which was getting louder and shriller, more desperate, which started Brittany into a panic because she realized she couldn't find Freya. At this point, the blizzard was now a whiteout. You couldn't see anything. If Freya was out there, and they couldn't find her in time. Brittany quickly opened the front door and looked down. Freya was sitting there on the front porch, not moving, a small mountain of snow accumulating on the top of her miserable-looking head, her body disappearing quickly into the snowbank in front of the door. Freya! Brittany grabbed Freya, wiped the snow from her, and then wrapped her up in 2 thick blankets. What did you think was going to happen? It's a blizzard. How did you even get outside? We've been inside for 2 days now. You'd think after I found you in the middle of nowhere in the dead of winter as a bloody kitten, you would have learned your lesson that snow is cold, but apparently not. And Freya just glared for the camera, thankful to be out of the blizzard, but had every intention of continuing to try and sneak out any chance she got. No kids allowed. The other thing I don't really like about the holidays, aside from dealing with the pine tree and its needles, is wrapping presents. I always seem to measure incorrectly and need to add scrap paper to cover gaps, and it takes me so long to do. Personally, I'm a big fan of tissue paper and gift bags. It takes a lot less effort and it still looks great. My mom, on the other hand, loves wrapping presents. When she was a kid, she would help her mom wrap presents, even her own. That was how much she enjoyed it. Once a year, about 2 weeks before Christmas, Mom would let all of us know on a Friday night that this was her wrapping weekend, which meant that unless it was dinner or an emergency or time to cart presents down to the tree, she was going to hermit up in their bedroom and little kids were to keep out. Starting Saturday morning, Mom would turn on her favorite movie, White Christmas, sit on the bed, and spend the next 2 days wrapping presents. The movie would be on repeat, and I remember Mom using this huge green cutting board she used to cut fabric to help her cut and wrap the presents. She would pick out 3 different wrapping papers, one for each side of the family, so that she could keep everything organized. The presents would go in empty laundry baskets when they were done to make it easy to carry them out on Christmas Day. Occasionally I would bring her eggnog refills, and she always made sure that none of our presents were sitting out. While my mom did her best to keep our gifts a surprise, I had my own ideas about that. Peeking. I 100% used to sneak peeks at my presents leading up to Christmas Day. Sometimes it was really easy. My parents would be at work and I'd walk into their bedroom closet and see Barbies and movies sitting in the knitting basket. They must have figured out that was not a good idea because then they started to really hide them, like stuffing them into grocery bags tucked deep into the corners of the closet or shoved under the mattress. The only presents I really craved to know what they were before the big day were books. Books were easy to tell because the present would gently flex, or if it was hardbound, it was just heavy and had a slight ridge. But that wasn't enough information for me to be satisfied. My absolute favorite thing in the world are books, and as a kid, I would suffer mental torture trying to figure out what book they had gotten me. Were they the next Harry Potter or the next Princess Diaries? I had to know. Note: if your present is wrapped in tissue paper, don't even bother doing this, you will just have to suffer. Now, sneaking a peek at an already wrapped present required the ability to be quiet, a steady hand, an eye for detail, in at least 30 minutes. First, I had to make sure my parents were not going to be near their bedroom. It was a whole lot easier if they were out grocery shopping or something, but I was a bold kid and didn't always wait for them to be out of the house. Being sneaky like this, I felt like a Christmas elf, and it was such a rush. When my parents were in the house, I had to be wickedly quiet. I didn't want to step on any of the squeaky floorboards, and I made sure to have my music blaring in my room so they would assume I was in there. I would then judge how much their bedroom door was closed, because when I was done snooping, I had to put it back exactly the way it was. I also took notice of the lighting situation, if any of the lights were on or off or dimmed, and which lights they were, because my parents' room had like 10 light switches. Then I'd get to the closet, checking the door and light situation yet again. Once in, now I had to find the presents. My mom got very tricky in hiding them, so this took longer and longer each year. Tucked into shoe boxes, with the shoes, buried in the dirty hamper basket, you get the idea. And when I found a present to me that was obviously a book, jackpot. Now came the tricky part. I then had to very carefully peel up a piece of the tape from the back and one piece from the bottom so that I could see the bottom of the book. This allowed me to very gently peel back the corner of the paper to see the book's cover. Front or back, it hardly mattered, because just by seeing that corner, I would know what book it was and if it was a book I had asked for. If it wasn't, well then, I just suffered until Christmas Day. After a quick rush of satisfaction that my parents had actually read my Christmas list, my nerves zipping with excitement and my heart pumping, I now needed to cover my tracks. I would put the tape back down exactly how it was on the paper. Sometimes the wrapping ripped or peeled off the design a little bit, and I really had to line it up perfectly, like I was a robot built for precision and not a clumsy butterfingered kid. Once everything was put back together, I'd put the presents back where I found them, exactly how I found them. I put the dirty clothes back in the hamper exactly how I found them. I put the presents back in the paper bag and made sure that the front of the bag was facing the right direction, patting the carpet down to hide my barely perceptible footprints as I carefully walked backwards out of the room. Then I quickly and quietly made my escape back to my room, again avoiding anything that squeaked, filled with a rush of satisfaction at a job well done. Now you'd think, why bother? You experienced the magic and joy of opening the gift already, and now, what would be the point of opening this gift a second time on Christmas and faking your excitement? Why would you do that to your parents who worked so hard to make it a surprise for you? But come Christmas Day, when I'd rip open my present, this time not caring about the tape placement, I didn't need to fake my excitement. My curiosity was quenched knowing what book it was, but now I actually was going to get to read the book. Don't worry, I don't do this anymore. Mostly because my parents don't really feel the need to hide the presents from me anymore. A great benefit to being grown up. Christmas Eve. The world quiets down, the stars twinkling brighter in anticipation. The cookies are baked, the Christmas pajamas and fuzzy socks are on. The presents are wrapped, the advent calendar finished, and the Christmas movies have been played until the DVDs have started to skip. It's Christmas Eve. Santa's top baking elf. My Aunt June dedicates at least 4 whole days just for baking Christmas cookies, brownies, pies, and candy. An entire dining table is covered in her treats, and every time we have Christmas at her house, we gain at least 1 new cavity just from the number of cookies we inhale. My family was a lot less intense with our baking. Mom would bake old-fashioned peanut brittle and molasses crinkles, my favorite cookie, and on Christmas Eve, we made Pillsbury's ready-to-bake sugar cookies and chocolate-covered pretzels. The sugar cookies were for us and Santa, but the chocolate-covered pretzels really were meant for the family get-togethers the next day, though that didn't stop anyone from sampling a few or 10. Smelling the melted semi-sweet chocolate chips and the white chocolate that wafted from the kitchen, mixing with the holiday cranberry and cinnamon candles Mom would have burning, occasionally taking a tortilla chip and dipping it in the melted chocolate like it was my favorite salsa. You know what? It is probably my favorite salsa. Just add some marshmallows and sprinkles and bam, you have sugar salsa. Aside from eating them, decorating the pretzels was the best part. My brother and I would get to pick out some special sprinkles for that year's pretzels, and we'd take turns decorating them. We would go a little crazy with the sprinkles. I was partial to large sugar sprinkles and the ones that looked like snowflakes. And when it was really cold outside, we just let the pretzels harden up on the back deck. Worked like a charm, and we didn't have to rearrange the entire refrigerator trying to get the metal sheets to fit. Once the pretzels were done cooling, it was time to plate our cookies for Santa. Catching Santa Claus. I was going to catch Santa Claus. I had the perfect plan. For years, a mysterious man in red and white would enter our house and eat the cookies and leave the presents, all without ever having been seen, ever by anyone. Not that year. I was going to catch Santa Claus in the act and prove to the world that he was real. The plan was this: to sleep underneath the Christmas tree. That was it. That was the whole plan. I told my parents this plan, and they were totally on board. When it was time to go to bed and I had on my favorite PJs, I scooted the presents that were under the tree just far enough so that I could fit under the tree with them. If the jolly fat man wanted to leave presents under the tree, he would have to set them on me, because there was no more room under the tree, and then BAM! Santa Claus would be caught by me, a little kid. Belly full of hot chocolate and sugar cookies, I stared up into the tree, entranced by this new view of our colored Christmas tree lights. I didn't remember falling asleep. The next thing I knew, I was waking up, covered in a blanket that wasn't there when I crawled under the tree the night before, presents tucked all around my person, and our stockings full to the point of overflowing. I hadn't counted on Santa not putting the presents under the tree, or him being so quiet that I wouldn't wake up. I'm a restless sleeper and was sure that any movement would have instantly woken me up. I was flabbergasted. My brother ended up hearing about my plan, and we both tried it again the next year, and the year after that, we never did catch him. Not so fun Christmas Eves. Some people are lucky and they don't have to confront their mortality until they are much older. I wasn't lucky in that regard. I was diagnosed with inappropriate sinus tachycardia when I was 11 years old. I'd be walking around a store, following my parents around waiting for them to get done shopping, bored out of my mind, and that seemed to trigger my heart to start trying to jump out of my chest and beat like I had just sprinted 50 miles. My heart would pump so hard you could see my shirt moving with each thump, and the beat was so fast you couldn't count the individual beats. I wasn't able to anticipate when an episode would strike, it just happened. As soon as it started, I would be very lightheaded and my chest would hurt, but the pain wasn't sharp. I used to liken it to a dull headache. I would breathe slow and easy, keep track of how long the episode lasted, and lay down on my back and just wait for it to pass. Each episode could last anywhere from 5 minutes to 5 hours. I would have an episode about 2 times a year, and it was completely random with no rational reason for it, like bad anxiety or too much caffeine, or my exercise was too intense. Thus the term inappropriate, because there is no logical reason for it to be happening. Twice I have had an episode happen on Christmas Eve. I found it quite ironic that both I and the fictional Scrooge would both face our mortality on Christmas Eve night. I didn't understand my condition when I was young. I just thought I was an 11-year-old kid having heart attacks a few times a year. That is not the case, and my heart condition is not life-threatening. But I didn't understand that for years. So whenever the episodes came, I would just think about the life I had lived up to that point, and accept that if this was my time to go, then okay. Except when it was on Christmas bloody Eve. I was not okay with potentially dying on Christmas Eve for 2 reasons. 1, it was Christmas Eve for Pete's sake, what a horrible time to die in the first place. And 2, Christmas Eve also happens to be my dad's birthday. How awful would it be for my dad to lose his daughter not only right before an important holiday to our family, but also on his birthday? I couldn't stand the thought of that as a little kid. Good news though, I understand my condition now and have no fear of meeting the Grim Reaper on Christmas Eve on account of my wonky heart and ruining my dad's birthday. Secret Santa. One year Mom had the best idea, to throw a surprise birthday party for my dad. It was going to be tricky. His birthday was on Christmas Eve, which meant there was a lot of planning involved, not just for this party, but for how Christmas was going to be celebrated the next day because everyone from both sides of the family was going to probably be staying past midnight and would be really tired the next day and not wanting to get up at 5 a.m. to open presents. My dad worked half days on Christmas Eve, so he would be home for half of the day while we were trying to bake food and get people here. And even if he was gone for the day, whenever he came back, all the cars at the front of the house would be a dead giveaway. I'm not sure where Dad went after work that day since he was done at noon, because he didn't end up coming home, and all the worries above were moot. Maybe he was working cows or something. I have no idea. But he was magically gone while everyone showed up. The whole family parked at the local elementary school and walked to our house, carrying all the presents and the food. There were maybe 30 people in that house, and Mom kept tabs on Dad's location and let us know when he was getting close. Us kids were super excited for when he would get home, maybe because we thought jumping out and yelling at someone was similar to scaring them. Isn't that a fun thing to do to an adult? Around 6 p.m., Mom told us he was driving down the street, and we all put down our pumpkin bread and mulled wine and turned off the lights and hid. We left the outdoor lights and the Christmas lights on, so it looked like his little family of 3 was already in bed or watching a movie down in the basement. All you could hear was the crackling of the fire in the fireplace and a few giggles from us kids, as well as some shushing from the adults. My dad walked in through the front door, turned on the hall light, and 30 people jumped up and screamed, "Happy birthday!" He burst out in shocked laughter, and when he caught his breath, he expressed his awe at this awesome stunt by saying, "Holy cow!" I still cherish the look of surprise and joy on my dad's face. This is probably my favorite Christmas memory. I can't imagine a moment that could top it. Except for catching Santa Claus, that would have taken the #1 slot for Christmas memories. Snow spell. I could waste hours away watching while it dances down to the ground in the absence of any wind, or slithering across roads like snakes. Driving through it felt like we were flying through outer space, dodging stars and planets. Snowflakes made the finest glitter when graced by the sun, and a light dusting teased of snowstorms to come later in the year. Snow transformed the dull brown landscape that is commonplace in a Midwest winter into a wonderland, for maybe a day. Stupendously cold and pristine, only to get muddy and slushy from asphalt and car exhaust. Haggard snowmen guarded everyone's yards when there was enough snowfall, which wasn't all that often. When given the choice between a snowball fight and making snow angels, I'd pick a snow angel every time. A snowball to the face just wasn't my cup of cocoa. Our rosy cheeks and runny noses were soothed with Mom's homemade chili, and snow at night created a lovely glow in the sky. A natural source of fertilizer for spring gardens, and anticipated by kids hoping, praying, begging for a day off of school. The song sung by Bing Crosby and the subsequent movie did a great job selling me that Christmas wasn't Christmas without snow. A thick blanket of snow was a rare sight to see in December, which made the anticipation, the hope, of a white Christmas more intense in me than, say, someone living in Minnesota. A little note about Missouri. The weather here is unpredictable. As I am writing this, it is October 28th. It's supposed to snow tomorrow. We didn't even make it to Thanksgiving week, which is when we normally get our first snowfall. Granted, it is only ever a light sugar dusting that instantly melts away, but still. I remember one time it snowed in May. It was 29 degrees Fahrenheit for a week, and then it was 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It snowed so much that they had to cancel school. It was ridiculous. Update. It snowed October 31st, Halloween. It was weird seeing trick-or-treaters' costumes covered up with clashing puffy winter coats and mittens. One Christmas I got my wish. Several inches of fresh snow had gently fallen Christmas Eve night, and I just stared out the car window the next morning on our way to my grandmother Leanne's house, squinting so hard I could hardly see because the snow was so bright. After getting to experience one white Christmas, I no longer need a white Christmas on Christmas, but snow is like whipped cream. It just makes everything better. Christmas Day. It's here, the best day of the year. Come, gather round for time with family and holiday cheer. Chocolate for Christmas. I discovered a VHS tape in the basement when I was in middle school, and it was a video of my first Christmas. My mom was holding the video camera and the living room was lit up all red from the Christmas tree in the background. I was 10 months old wearing a white onesie sitting in my dad's lap, and he pulled over my stocking and began to unpack it for me. The first thing to plop out, a 10-ounce bag of chocolate M&Ms. I was fascinated by the texture of the paper/plastic, I guess, and was tugging at it, and Mom asked, "Can she eat those yet?" Dad looked up at Mom, shrugged and said, "Why not? It's Christmas," and then proceeded to open the bag for me, showing me the tiny morsels and letting me play with them. I don't remember the rest of the video, but I remember thinking that my parents were brilliant deciding that my first Christmas present ever should be chocolate. The stockings. It's 4 a.m. on Christmas morning. Our parents are asleep, and my brother and I are up, realizing that it's Christmas, which meant that Santa was coming, or had already stopped by. My brother and I creeped very carefully down the stairs, careful of the squeaky floorboards. This was the one time of the year we didn't fight or argue because we both knew that this was a great idea. Our eyes would catch on the new presents scattered under or in the tree, and we would be tempted to look closer because that one there sure looked like a brand new hardback book, and that one over there sure looked like some new Hot Wheels. But we had a mission, and we locked our eyes on our prize, the stockings. I have to say, I had the better stocking. Both of ours were handmade by our mom. My brother's was made of a stiff, creamy cotton fabric with red and green felt trains and cars stitched on the front with tiny little brass bells. My stocking was crocheted from soft, dusty rose yarn with a cute teddy bear holding a present on the front. My Christmas stocking was a gift trap. The yarn was so stretchy that you had to keep putting presents in it because it looked empty compared to my brother's, which just meant that Santa probably had to fly back to his workshop at Silver City and make my brother more toys so that he'd be fair between the two of us. We were both equally good kids, you know. We dumped our stockings out on the floor, inspecting and organizing our loot. Toy cars and candy, nail polish and socks. The orange here, the cola bottle there. And then when we were done staring at them, we stuffed it all back into our stockings in the order we took them out so that it looked like they hadn't been touched. Later that morning after breakfast, we opened our stockings and pretended we had never seen these toy cars, candy, nail polish, and socks before. We still do this to this day. My brother and I will be in our 70s and will still creep down to rifle through our stockings before anyone else is up. Some traditions will just never die. Breakfast first. Most kids, when they wake up, they just want to sprint headlong into the tree and start ripping into everything. My parents, to curb these understandable impulses, made my brother and I eat breakfast before going down to the tree on Christmas morning. Maybe this is why we snuck out early to pull out everything in our stockings. My family tried to be relatively healthy throughout the year. For breakfast, we'd have Honey Nut Cheerios or Kashi granola cereal, maybe some eggs and bacon on a special day. But when it's Christmas, all bets are off. We'd go grocery shopping the week of Christmas, and my brother and I would get to pick out a fun cereal to eat on Christmas Day. We'd usually go with Captain Crunch or Captain Crunch's Crunch Berries and Lucky Charms. We all know that we really only wanted the marshmallows. Why we never bothered to just put regular marshmallows in milk, I'll never know. As we got older, our taste did grow a little more sophisticated. Now Christmas breakfast comes with homemade pancakes or Belgian waffles. We'd have fresh hot cocoa or eggnog, and then once breakfast was done, we'd all head downstairs to grab our stockings and stake out our spots to commence ripping open presents, which we did with enthusiasm. Books, wolves, and hummingbirds, oh my! Whether stuffed into stockings, wrapped up and topped with a bow, or cheekily placed inside the Christmas tree, gifts are a huge part of the Christmas celebration. I would start writing my wish list for Santa pretty much right after my birthday, which is February, so by the time November rolled around, I'd have a really long list. My mom was very wise and suggested that I divide my list into two, mailing one to Santa and giving her the other one, because she also needed ideas, as did the grandparents. I thought it was a good idea, so I started doing that. Unless it was books, I would list themes rather than specific things like Disney merch from Beauty and the Beast, or Barbies, or cats. One year I let my grandma know that I really liked wolves. The rest of the family was told, and I didn't need to bother with a Christmas list for a long time unless it was a list of books. I received a ceramic wolf teapot, 8 wolf dinner plates, 8 wolf salad plates, 8 wolf mugs, 8 sets of wolf flatware, 8 wolf napkins, wolf hand and dish towels, a wolf tablecloth, a large wolf bath towel, a wolf felt blanket, a howling wolf figurine, 2 sets of wolf glass tree ornaments, a wolf velvet poster, wolf cards, a wolf keychain, wolf bedroom curtains, wolf art prints and photographs, wolf flannel sheets and pillowcases, a wolf dust ruffle, wolf cookie cutters, wolf jewelry, as well as several wolf t-shirts and sweatshirts. I loved each and every wolf-themed gift and enjoyed them for years, but I half expected that I would wake up one Christmas morning and find a wolf pup under the tree waiting for me. I couldn't begin to recall all the gifts I've ever received. I just know that I did my best to be thankful for each one. But there are a few that hold a special place in my heart because they impacted my life so much. My grandpa Clark was an avid photographer, taking pictures of anything. From architecture and wild animals to family portraits and jet plane sky trails, nothing could hide from his camera lens. When I was around 5 or 6, my grandfather gave me a hot pink translucent plastic film camera for Christmas. I remember loving the color and spending the rest of the evening figuring out how it worked and testing the different settings. That camera started me down my lifelong passion for nature and wildlife photography, one that I will always share with him. My other lifelong passion is reading. I devoured books as a kid and still do as an adult. Part of the appeal of books for me is that they allowed me to escape, to be transported. When reading a book, I could become a grotesque ogre or a dust-worn explorer. I could travel to the Giza pyramids or dive deep into the deepest oceans to swim with great white sharks. Looking back, I realized that books did so much more than just provide an escape from reality for a while. Illustrated encyclopedias taught me to always be curious. Dear Children of the Earth taught me to love and care for nature. And Treasure Island taught me to be adventurous and to take risks. Lessons I still try and practice now as an adult. But you know what gave me so much more satisfaction than receiving gifts? Giving them, though not all of my gifts made it out unscathed. When I was a kid, Bass Pro Shops had a little shop near their fudge counter where you could find all kinds of handmade glass decorations. One November, my eye caught on a pair of small, delicate, hand-blown glass hummingbird earrings, and I knew immediately that I had to get them for Mom. They were purchased and wrapped up in a tiny ribbon, and I kept thinking the whole way home on how I was going to give them to Mom on Christmas Day. Did I want to put them in the tree where she could stumble across them, or hand them to her as we were passing out gifts? I decided that I was going to put them in her stocking as soon as we got home. That way I couldn't lose them and there would be less risk of breaking. I didn't count on my brother noticing the small bulge in Mom's stocking and asking questions about it, and taking it out any chance he got. He wanted Mom to open it, convinced Santa came early that year, and why should she wait for Christmas? No matter what I said, my brother would continue to take it out and shake it, and I would get madder and madder as the days went on. Finally, when our parents weren't around, I told him to leave it alone because I was the one who put it in there. It was a gift from me to Mom, and it was glass, so he had to stop touching it and stop talking about it. I didn't want to change my plans because I still thought it would be cool for Mom to find it Christmas morning in her stocking. It made me feel a little like Santa. My brother finally understood and left it alone. Christmas morning came, and when Mom got to the little white box in her stocking, I was shaking with excitement. Untying the silver ribbon, she exclaimed, "Oh, these are so pretty!" And I told her they were from me. I felt like the Grinch, my heart getting bigger and bigger as well as my smile. "Oh, thank you, Sam, they are wonderful!" "Oh, what's this?" "Oh, dear. Oh, Sam, honey, they're broken." My brain stopped working. What? Mom passed me the box, and there was one hummingbird, his beak and wing broken off. I don't remember how I reacted after that. I probably cried. But what I do remember is that I was resolved that the next year I would go back to that little shop inside Bass Pro Shops and buy her another pair. But when we next went to Bass Pro, the shop was no longer there. She never got to wear the earrings. One Christmas, I got the idea to gift everyone a unique Christmas ornament to put on their trees. I found the coolest one for my dad. It was a glass Hawaiian shirt, and it was perfect for him because when my dad wanted to look relaxed but still put together, he'd bring out his favorite Hawaiian shirt. He opened up the bag and was pleasantly surprised by my gift and was excited to put it on his tree. Feeling rather pleased with myself, we all packed up to go to the next Christmas party, and my dad and stepmom were running a little late. They eventually showed up, and we gathered in the kitchen ready to chow down on more Christmas goodies. I was chilling with Dad and my stepmom, waiting for all the food to get done cooking, and I heard a murmur about an ornament and broke, which immediately grabbed my attention. An ornament broke? Which one? I asked, thinking that my aunt's dog Shadow had knocked one off the tree with his tail or something. My stepmom just looked at me, stricken, and then I knew. "Oh no!" I laughed in good humor. "Did the Hawaiian shirt not make it?" "I don't know what happened," she exclaimed. "I set it down and then got in the car and then it broke." I wasn't worried. "That's okay, I can find it, get a replacement, no biggie." But my dad had an even better idea. The ornament hadn't shattered into a million pieces, one of the arms had just broken off. Dad decided to wrap some white paper towel around it like a bandage and color the bottom with red Sharpie. The ornament now looked like it had gotten into a fight with a shark and lost. A much better story. Sometimes gifts were accidentally discovered ahead of Christmas, not from peeking, actual accidents. One Christmas we were in the middle of opening up presents and it was my mom's turn. It was from my dad and I had no idea what it was, but Mom's eyes popped open and she laughed and threw her hands up in the air yelling, "Yes!" It was a modem from AT&T and that meant we would no longer have dial-up internet. I knew that was good, but I didn't know why it was good until I got to experience fast internet firsthand. Later I found out that Mom actually already knew about this gift. She had called AT&T to ask about getting high-speed internet for our house, and she was told that she already had the service. She knew right then that Dad had signed up for it, and it was probably a Christmas gift from him to her. And she was right. Oops. I have to say that out of all the gifts I've ever given, this book has been the most labor-intensive, the most unique, the one I am the proudest of. This little book has been a blast to write, and I hope that it puts a big smile on my dad's face when he reads it. Christmas at Grandma Leanne's. The first family Christmas we go to was usually at my Grandma Leanne's house, in the Kansas countryside. After changing out of our Christmas PJs and into our fancy Christmas clothes, we'd pack all the presents into laundry baskets and put them in the back of our van. My brother and I would hold the casserole dishes and the chocolate-covered pretzels on our laps, and we'd drive through small towns with their decorations all lit up, the red and gold tinsel on the street lights glittering in the sun. Once we hit the gravel roads, we knew we were almost there. Cow pastures and woods blurred past, and then we'd turn a corner and there would be my grandma's house. A white ranch house with huge trees everywhere, her beautiful flower garden deep in hibernation, her Colorado spruce tree decorated in big, bright, metallic gold and red Christmas balls, with strings of huge lights glowing. We'd pass by a few of my grandpa's cows on our way in, the plot of land with the red barn their home in the winter months. The vegetable garden was quite dead by now, but memories of ripe red, homegrown, fresh-off-the-vine tomatoes still lingered in my memory from the summer. We go up into the house through their garage and burst in on everyone working hard in the kitchen. My grandma would be sitting at the small kitchen table cutting up vegetables, and my Aunt Cecilia would be running around with a cute apron on, getting the Christmas china and silver out and helping Grandma out whenever she needed it. Aunt June would usually be at the stove, stirring something on the stove top and also manning whatever was in the oven, and my mom would join her. Hi, hello, how are you? Presents over there? Oh, let me get that for you. Yes, the casserole can go over there. Be sure to take your shoes off now. I don't want mud or food on that carpet in there. The decor inside my grandma's home is what I would call cowboy Victorian lady chic. Deep walnut wood paneling on one side of the building, with the rest of the walls colored a lovely light cream. Pictures of vintage rose illustrations mingled with pictures of cowboys wrangling herds of cattle, filling in the blank spots not covered with family portraits of my dad, Uncle Dan, and Aunt Cecilia when they were young. There were display cabinets full of fine china, crystal, and delicate teacups. Long Venetian lace curtains covered the windows, and a large wine-red velvet Victorian couch sat catty-corner to my grandmother's piano and to my grandfather's big leather chair. A large Boston fern sat between the piano and the TV. Next to the TV was this huge dresser, which would be decorated with a Christmas village and hold ribbon candy and homemade goodies from my Aunt June. My grandma's Christmas tree has always been a favorite sight on Christmas Day. Gold, burgundy, and dusty pink vintage ornaments were layered within the tree, with delicate feathered birds gracing the branches. One year she didn't bother with all that. Instead, she took antique doll clothes and pinned them to the tree as ornaments, and it was really unique. While lunch was getting ready, my brother and I would drag out the toys. Our favorite was this red barn with working doors and a green roof you could lift up that my Grandpa Blake made for his kids when they were little. We'd play with the animal miniatures, mostly cows of course, or crawl inside for whatever reason, probably just because we could. Eventually the adults would let us know that it was lunchtime. After prayer, we'd sit down to eat turkey that was so heavy it took both my dad and brother to carry it into the dining room. Cranberry chutney and oyster stuffing, green bean casserole and yams, my pumpkin pie, and my grandmother's cream pie, a recipe that's gotta be about 100 years old by now. Laughter was an essential ingredient to our meals, and Christmas was no exception. Everyone would start talking about the antics that everyone got up to in their youth. Fishing stories, cow stories, and misadventures between my aunts and uncles, and them yelling at each other because everyone had a different version of the same story, so who was correct? After lunch, us kids would sit on the floor staring in anticipation at the presents and noticing a few that were tucked into the tree. The adults would slowly enter the living room, and then we'd pick someone to hand out the presents. There were many years where my Aunt June and her family couldn't be with us for Christmas because they lived in Colorado for a long time. So they snail mailed their gifts, and we'd set up the video recorder and we'd snail mail back a VHS tape for them to enjoy of us opening the presents. Luckily, they moved to Kansas when I was in high school, and now they get to see everyone open up their presents in person, not through the television. In recent years, we have added a white elephant gift exchange, and it is always hilarious. Packs of gum, toilet paper, the best gift of 2020, a basketball hoop for you to put on the bathroom door so you can shoot hoops while you do your business, and Swedish fish. everyone fights over that one. There is one Christmas I will always remember because I have photographic evidence. My mom got my grandma some books, and then Grandma Leanne looked at them and said, "Oh, are these about the Stepford Wives or something?" Because the title was very similar to the title of that movie, but it was actually about a quilting club or something. My mom lost it. She was laughing so hard she fell out of her chair and was rolling around in the piles of wrapping paper on the floor, and everyone followed suit. It was such a happy moment and definitely one of my favorite pictures to look at leading up to Christmas. Once all the presents had been opened, we all sit around and talk some more, gradually starting to pick up the wrapping paper and stuff it into these big yellow trash bags. Soon it was time for us to head out because we had one more Christmas to attend. The Freeman Christmas at my Grandma Susan's house in Kansas City. Christmas at Grandma Susan's. After packing up the car with our new loot and the rest of the chocolate-covered pretzels, as well as some of my Aunt June's treats, because we had to make some headway climbing up that mountain, we would head on up to Grandma Susan's house for Christmas dinner. Driving back through the cute country towns and into the city where there was hardly any yard space, though that wasn't the case for my Grandma Susan's house. They lived in a brick house on the corner of the street and had a monstrous oak tree in the front yard. Now, the only thing we always had to remember when going to Grandma Susan's house was to be careful when opening the front door. Duke, my grandparents' English setter, would try to run out the front door, and if he succeeded, we'd be chasing him around town for 2 hours, and none of us wanted to do that. Grandma Susan would always dress up in something bright red and wear a beautiful brooch, usually a tree or wreath, a fashion choice I try to emulate. My grandfather would be sitting in his recliner chair having a cigarette and watching all us kids running around and playing, getting in the adults' way as they were trying to get presents inside and food cooked. My mom was one of 4 kids, and all of them had kids, so there would be around 25 people at this house for Christmas. When it was time to eat, the adults got to sit in the dining room while the kids got a fold-up table and chairs in the parlor room next to the tree. We didn't mind too much because we had a great view of the tree. Grandma Susan's tree was very different from Grandma Leanne's, but it was just as beautiful and I loved it just as much. Her tree was really fat, but she didn't overload it with ornaments. She used family ornaments passed down from her mother, hand-crocheted white snowflakes and sequined felt angels. Twinkling white lights wore clear spiky star hats, which created a disco light effect on the walls and ceiling when the parlor lights were turned off. There were a few silk thread nutcracker heads. Yep, just the heads. Some vintage shiny bright Christmas ornaments, and intricate gold and silver metal trains and wreaths. But the coolest part was on the floor. The entire tree was surrounded by a working train. My brother in particular loved it and would play with it instead of eat his dinner. After prayer, we'd start eating, and I looked forward to the food at Grandma Susan's house all year long. Cheesy potato casserole with crunchy cornflakes baked on top, creamy cheddar broccoli rice, beef brisket, tart red hot cinnamon apples, my grandma's homemade cheesecake, her homemade chocolate and peanut butter fudge, my Aunt Mo's homemade English toffee, and my cousin Sabrina's peanut butter balls. All of these delicacies didn't matter in the slightest if we didn't have Grandma's rolls. These rolls were so good, and we loved them so much, she would just give a giant pan of rolls to some of us as our Christmas gift. No one was ever sad about that. My grandma would always go above and beyond to make sure that everyone was happy and having a good time. This attitude extended to presents as well, and one Christmas this became a problem. Christmas was at my Aunt Penny's that year, and Grandma had to ring us and get help taking the presents to the house because they couldn't all fit in her van. From that moment on, she started a new tradition of gifting everyone a shoebox. No, it was not a pair of shoes every year. Instead, she would fill old shoe boxes full of our favorite snacks, a pair of Christmas socks, gift cards, and in my case, books. Once gift giving was done, she'd take the boxes back to reuse again next year. Gift unwrapping went a lot faster thanks to these shoe boxes, but there was still enough wrapping paper to use in wrapping paper snowball fights, a Freeman family tradition. Once everyone was tired of throwing wrapping paper snowballs at each other, us kids would sit and play with some of our new toys while the adults broke out the board games and talked about sports and politics. Sometime during the evening, our parents would tell us it was time to go, and we'd start the slow Midwest process of saying goodbye. Packing up the gifts, getting rid of the trash, packing food up to take home, lots and lots of hugs, and then carting all of it back to the car, with our parents playing Tetris trying to get everything to fit. On the ride home, I'd gaze at the night sky and the twinkling stars just thinking about the day. How happy we all were, all the laughter, all the great food, how pretty everything was. I'd be thinking about it as I crawled into my bed and went to sleep. The day after. Well, it's over now. Christmas blues. The morning after Christmas, we all slept in and would eventually treat ourselves to a bowl or two of the Lucky Charms from the day before. Any book I received was immediately read, all the candy and treats from our stockings were immediately eaten, and any gift card was immediately spent. We'd play with our toys, watch our new movies. But then, a whiff of anxiety would sneak in to scrunch my nose, and pretty soon that sense of wonder faded. It was now time to figure out where all my new toys, books, and nail polish were going to live. What usually preceded was a 2-week endeavor of hunting down plastic bins and shuffling furniture around, figuring out what else I could possibly store under my bed, and if I could stand to have another bric-a-brac on my bookshelves. Being 12 years old and trying to figure out how to store an entire household's worth of wolf dishes and linens. My parents went back to work, all the decorations came down, more vacuuming up tree needles, and now I had to play catch-up with my schoolwork because I hated doing anything school-related before Christmas. The house went back to normal, and normal felt and looked like a boiled chicken breast, bland and boring. To me, the magic of the holidays was always too short. This year, 2019, is no exception. There's only 4 weeks practically between Thanksgiving and Christmas, hardly enough time to really enjoy the Christmas season. I now understand why Christmas in July exists in the Northern Hemisphere. It's never long enough. Christmas is to come. The future's looking bright. My Christmas bucket list. Lots of people have a bucket list, but I have more than one. Must see before I die, to do before I die, food I want to make, and a Christmas bucket list. At the top of the list is to try out some new holiday traditions like hanging strands of tinsel on the tree, not using it to tie flies, making popcorn and cranberry garlands, and clove orange pomanders. I want to decorate gingerbread houses and go to Silver Dollar City to see A Christmas Carol again. I know, I've already done this, but it's been so long. I want to hang up real mistletoe and experience a Hallmark Christmas movie-worthy kiss. Nothing like poisonous greenery to store up romance during the holidays. I want to make a Yule log cake or a bûche de Noël. I want to try roasting hazelnuts and do something each night of the 12 days of Christmas. I want to go on a sleigh ride, preferably while it's snowing. I want to see the Nutcracker again, this time at the Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts. I want to visit the Lee Summit Magic Tree. I'm sure other towns have something like this, but every year this lone tree in the middle of a field will suddenly light up and it's so pretty. Kind of like magic because I never see anyone putting on the lights or flipping the switch. I want to experience Christmas in Hawaii or Arizona, anywhere there is no winter weather. I want to see what Christmas is like in London or Paris. Experience a Scandinavian Christmas, maybe in Norway or Denmark. Go on that sleigh ride, maybe? And one Christmas has to be spent in New York City, where I'll try ice skating and see the Radio City Christmas Spectacular. Like all other bucket lists, this list will just keep on growing, but hopefully I'll get to cross some items off this year. I usually have to work Christmas Eve night, but this year I was given the day off. This year we are having the Sawyer Christmas on Christmas Eve because this is the first time in years that my grandma Leanne hasn't had to play the piano for midnight mass. We'll laugh and eat and celebrate my dad's birthday. Christmas morning, I'll head over to my mom's house and we'll have our Christmas, where I will try to convince her to make some of her homemade peanut brittle or her molasses crinkles. White Christmas will be playing on the TV on repeat. Once home, I'll sit cuddled up in the living room in my favorite PJs across from the Christmas tree, drinking hot cocoa and eating some Pillsbury ready-to-bake Santa hat sugar cookies while Shirley begs for a crumb. I'll read from my treasury of Christmas stories, occasionally looking up to check and see which ornaments the cats are knocking out of the tree. A Christmas story will be playing in the background, and I'll be smiling, happy to have created new Christmas memories. Sweet treats. You've made it to the end. Thank you. And now a little surprise for you. A recipe or two. Aunt Mary's peanut brittle. Ingredients: 2 cups of white sugar, 1 cup light caro syrup, ½ cup of water, 3 cups raw Spanish peanuts, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 1 tablespoon of oleo, 1 heaping tablespoon of baking soda. In a heavy skillet, mix in the white sugar, caro syrup, and water. Using a candy thermometer, cook to 234 degrees Fahrenheit. Add all the peanuts and cook until the temperature reaches 300 degrees Fahrenheit, stirring frequently. Stir in the vanilla and oleo until fully blended. Sprinkle the baking soda over the top of the candy. Stir exactly 3 times in the opposite direction and then pour the candy onto a greased cookie sheet. Let the candy cool, then crack it and enjoy. Mom's Molasses Crinkles, Sam's favorite. Ingredients: 3/4 cup shortening, 1½ cup of white sugar, ½ cup in a separate bowl, 1 large whole egg, 4 tablespoons of molasses, 2 cups of flour, 3 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon ground cloves, 1 teaspoon ground ginger, ½ teaspoon of salt. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Cream together the shortening, egg, molasses, and cup of sugar. Sift into the mixture the flour, baking soda, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and salt. Mix until fully incorporated. Form medium-sized balls of dough and roll in the bowl of sugar, fully coating the cookie. Place on a greased baking sheet and bake for 12 minutes. Let cool and set them aside for me to scarf down later. My wish for you. Whether you celebrate Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Yule, or nothing at all, I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season and get to make some awesome, wacky, and happy holiday memories.